Well met, lords and ladies, Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. I haven't been able to clear out the memory on this phone just yet, so this will probably, well, this has a maximum time of 29 minutes and 46 seconds, but seeing as I don't have that much to talk about this week, famous last words, I know, that should be all right. That should be okay. Should be suitable, I guess. I don't know. So I guess first of all, update on the computer situation. Well, I've gotten into the swing of what I can actually do on the spare computer. I've transferred over what I need, basically, or and the stuff that I haven't is still in reserve. As it turns out, I was optimistic last time in terms of our file backups. There are some things that appear to either be missing or just in a different directory that I haven't found. Obviously from copying an entire thing off of a computer, there's still the shortcuts are a bit wonky and such. As for the main computer itself, that battle is still ongoing. I've gone through a number of drives now, of other disks that might be compatible and such. I even thought, it's a good time to replace the battery that hasn't been working for ages because. I asked for one for, I think my birthday actually, and never just got round to replacing it, because unscrewing the bottom was a nightmare, but can now be done. But yeah, I don't know, that's, and of course, another thing was that it was becoming quite apparent that it overheated quite quickly, and that's because it had dust pretty much everywhere, which might have been, I suspect, is the real reason behind all of the issues. I mean, it's possible that, I said last week that the antiviruses that I re-downloaded that were fine before, were, I had to, and then that's when they crashed. It wasn't going to crash like that at that time. But I think a lot of the stuff that was an issue before was because there's something wrong with the hardware. And I say that because, again, well, the dust, etc., something could have been blown around, I don't know, the circuit could have been damaged or something. It's just because we couldn't identify any sort of operating system at all for quite some time. The update regarding that is that, because they say like, oh yeah, restore a certain point or tell us like we want to install the operating system. It's like, well, there is none, we can't see it, so we can't do much. In fact, a lot of the options for repairing the PC that were there before were just were absent until Monday. I think that's when we made some progress with both my dad and I throwing around ideas until eventually a new installation worked and we're able to get Windows up and running. Surprisingly, it now gives the option at the beginning to go for the Windows 10 or Windows 11. The operating system that my dad installed was supposed to be Windows 11, but the only one that works is Windows 10. So we're able to actually boot up the computer now, which is something. But the issue now is that it doesn't seem to connect to any networks or I'll be able to find them. So once again, a drive appears to be missing, but is kind of difficult to install once again to actually identify networks. Especially if, you have to download them from an online source, which itself requires a network. I don't know if a hotspot will work, I doubt it, if it just can't find like anything, really. If they can't find any sort of Wi-Fi connection. I did say to my dad that, I can use it for all of the heavy processing and stuff. If I needed to, I could use its power to transfer stuff over and such. I just couldn't use it for, for things like streaming or uploading. I can render videos on there, I can edit them, I just can't post them. Which, where basically that was, my attempt to reassure that, progress had in fact been made and, something of substance could be done. He did argue, rightfully so, that, there's not much you can do without a Wi-Fi connection, because a lot of that stuff is, kind of interchanges between and such. So, which I get, but I'm trying to think on the bright side in this scenario, because if not, one of us is going to go mad. It's most likely going to be him. So, yeah. I'm still on the other computer. Speaking of network stuff, I realized that my other computer connects automatically to one of our two network connections, that our two Wi-Fi connections, and that's one that's not as good as one that's faulty, and I forgot to switch it over to the other one. But I've taken off the connect automatically function now, so on one of them, so it shouldn't ever be an issue again. And as it turns out, the latest D&D stream went off without a hitch from that other computer. So, I've now tested that both streaming methods that I use, StreamYard and OBS, depending on the circumstance, function as intended. In fact, I was able to prep stuff much more easily this time. And even when we were doing, computer diagnostics and stuff, we actually, we called it a day after the whole, network thing and such, and then I went off to do my thing and set up, and I was actually even early for once. Not that we started on time, because we never do, but, that was the intention, at least. So, yeah, that's where things are at now. Things are functioning. I can edit stuff. I've now got FireAlpaca on the computer, so I can deal with a request that Aidan brought in to me. I might do an editing stream at some point, because, even then things have been a bit slow on my end, so I might do that for the Fallen Angel stuff that I've been asked to help out with. So yeah, that's the IRL update, I suppose, because there's not that much else I can really say this time. Other stuff has been happening, but either people aren't going to be interested or it's going to be private information, so I'm not going to be like, So that's where I'm at right now. As far as online stuff goes, just to pad the runtime of this a little bit, I suppose, I looked at the reviews from this week, and I wondered if there was any particular theme behind them. And surprisingly, there was a connection, but it seemed almost directly opposite to what it was supposed to be originally. So, or what one of them was versus the other is what I meant to say. So, that specifically, I'm thinking about the 4 relics from yesterday, and the and Freak Show from a few days ago. Because with both of those, I reviewed episode 5 this week, but one of them is the 4 relics particularly is spiraling significantly, and the other one, while still having the usual logical fallacies and such, is still going quite strong by comparison. Not to say that there weren't a few out of character moments, and Rev does in fact pivot his motivation or his methodology halfway through the episode out of seemingly nowhere. But compare that to the character of Martha's sister in the last episode, suddenly agreeing to go on a date with a police officer that told her that her sister was kidnapped, and you think, what the heck? Really? That's what we're focusing on. And the difference is that one show feels like it's trying to do certain things, but hasn't worked out the best way to get there. Or it's like, oh, wouldn't this be fun if this thing happened? And then it's like, well, the setup that you provided does not support this. So you have to have the characters act either, out of character or do something utterly out of pocket to actually get there. Rather than an obstacle a circumstance that would be like, okay, let's do this. So yeah, I don't know. As it stands right now, the setup for those is not is not the best. But compare that to like Freak Show, for example, where, you know, Rev had a positive moment, you know, probably the best time that he's had, or the best, like, you know, evolution, I guess, in episode 4. Episode 5, he sort of pivots in the other direction and goes, you know, much more extreme to see what kind of reaction he can get from the principal. Again, a very common thing to do, especially for a school where, you know, everyone's supposed to be, you know, according in the principal's own words, suffering from delinquency. Of course, that was going to happen at some point. And the principal probably should not have goaded him on to see how far he was willing to go, considering that he has attempted on multiple occasions to forfeit his own immortal life. That was definitely a dumb moment from the principal. And yeah. So it's no surprise the way that the episode ended up, but it was a surprise, I guess, you know, or a sobering moment for Rev to realize that expulsion meant having Eratom separated and never be reconstituted. You know, essentially providing him exactly what he wanted at the beginning, but then realizing like, oh, wait a minute, be careful what you wish for, you might as well get it. That situation. I do like that in media where, you know, where someone realizes that the extreme they thought they wanted to go to, they hadn't considered the repercussions, especially with, you know, young protagonists, because, you know, at that point everything seems super extreme, or like, you know, have to like the worst of the worst. So there's only one solution, and it is the most dramatic possible. Before you think like, oh, wait a second, no, actually. So despite the fact that Rev decided, you know, to go through one thing, and then when one circumstance led out of control, he pivoted towards the middle. You know, his journey throughout the actual episode, you know, I think the difference is that, you know, Rexifer decides a concept or a premise for the episode and what it entails in the larger context of the series and Rev's ultimate goal. And the 4 relics is trying to, you know, make moments happen and not putting pieces together as to how those things would actually go. And there's nothing wrong with having a seed in mind and working your way towards it. That's, if anything, what I did in Mutant Girl Season 2, with the reveal of not so much who was behind everything, but, you know, how the plan came together. I realized, having received feedback on my books from like way back in the day, that I'm far better at making a twist in a mystery how it was committed versus who actually did it. You know, sort of the Columbo approach, where you know who was responsible, but then how they're going to get caught is the real thing. Except in my one, I don't say who it was, because that sort of ruins it. But yeah, they're kind of more similar to that, I think. Not to say that I didn't do a twist, because I absolutely did, but, you know, I already had set up way in advance, even during the writing of season 1, actually, I realized, you know, that's the concept I put Shiny, you know, how this would go down, why they went down the certain way they did. Maybe not quite all of the details, or when they would appear and mention, but, you know, season 2 was definitely crafted so that those things would become apparent, you know, either as the series went on, or upon rewatches that the clues were actually put together. And yeah, that's obviously applies to mystery circumstances, but, you know, for general story premises, it's very similar. And it's something that I think about in terms of like, oh, well, you know, I was thinking about that in terms of like show longevity, and ones that, you know, you want to see the way that they actually continue. A lot of shows will leverage their best ideas, or they will stretch them as far as they think they feasibly can, given audience investment, and we'll use that as a way to either, if they're on a network, keep getting renewed, or if they're on the internet, to keep getting buzz and support. So yeah, that's so I think that's probably it. I mean, it's also why like a lot of formulaic shows work so well, if they keep updating things. Like a lot of French shows, for example, Code Lyoko particularly being the prime example I can think of, where the formula is consistent. They're willing to break it if time goes by, and at least to like a certain point, for an episode or two, and then they'll pivot back. But every season, there'll be some sort of major change, usually a tragic loss, to the status quo. That means the formula is not the same each time. That something is different, or a new potential spin can actually be applied. In the case of Code Lyoko, it's okay. Well, you've got the, at the time, 4 Lyoko warriors on Earth, 3 of which can virtualize themselves and join a 5th virtual one. They couldn't materialize, and that's why they couldn't turn off the computer that had the virus that was attacking the world in the first place. In season 1, they materialize her. They realize that there's some sort of thing that's like connecting them together. They still can't turn it off, but now there's the idea of, okay, well now, the virus wants to bring her back into the virtual world, and wants to make it so they can steal like part of her memory. We don't realize why. There's a key that's included there that can escape the computer. Can't do it anymore. So season 3 starts to destroy the virtual world at the same time as doing all these attacks. It's like all these things that are get added. Season 4, multiple replicas, multiple virtual worlds, a friend of theirs that has been held hostage and has been used as a weapon against them. All these things that keep escalating these ideas, while the core premise is, attacks on Earth must deactivate towers. By season 4, that's sort of, only like half of the focus by that point. So, yeah, it's just a thing that I see appear in quite a lot of French media. Not really so much Wakfu, for example. That's more of a Quest idea, but in a lot of other stuff. And yeah, I think that's I think that's part of like why, why after even like 4 seasons, and even like after like 20 years or so of being off the air, minus if you don't count Evolution, people wanted to see some sort of conclusion, because a lot of stuff was left open-ended because they because of whatever reason they decided to not do a season 5, which was always the intention. It was never going to end at that point. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one thing that I think a lot more internet-based series, or a lot of like other series in general can like use, because while there's certain stuff that is different for TV syndication versus internet-based stuff, and while a formula is going to get more stale much more quickly if you don't adapt it on the internet, it still has merit, or it still has merit as long as you're able to either escalate the stakes, like in the last episode of Freak Show, or you're able to put a different spin on it without hopefully too much of a leap in logic, like the other episodes of Freak Show. So as much as that show is definitely not perfect, it does a lot extremely well. And like like other shows, like other certain French show I haven't mentioned that also follows the same pattern, and has shared some of the writers, I get more behind it than some people can, on account of how much good it does, even if the flaws are there. Just do enough for people to rally behind you, and don't stretch yourself too much. Don't milk it don't milk certain things we want to happen for too long, because people are going to stick around after the payoff, hopefully, especially if there's more that you've offered them since then. That's what can we say for now. I'm running out of time and I'm by the street, so please leave a like or dislike because your opinion matters. And subscribe if you haven't done so already. And on that note, until next time, farewell.